We have the McMichaels. They're at their house. They've been notified by a neighbor that there's someone, rummaging around on their property. Their property had previously been burglarized several times.
Well, the neighbors.
The neighbor, yes. And so they think, in their minds, I think they think maybe a burglary is going on. So they go out looking for this person because the police response in their neighborhood is kind of lackluster. They kind of live remotely. So they go out and they encounter Ahmaud Arbery at this point running on a roadway. And what kind of happens from there?
Well, the McMichaels, they were aware of this house. So it wasn't the McMichaels' property
right.
that was being supposedly burglarized or being, that Ahmaud Arbery was supposedly prowling in, which I think there's surveillance video that shows that he was. But then they basically said, we have a belief that this person had engaged in a crime, and now this is the part that's really difficult to understand. For some reason, we're going to chase after him, even though he poses no direct threat to us, and in fact did not even take any of our stuff. Even if you do believe, even if he's running down the street with a, with a power saw or whatever that he could have taken from this construction site, it's not the McMichaels power saw,
right?
And so, what interest did the McMichaels really have in doing this? Because one thing that, regardless of what state you're in, the defensive property laws, I mean, even in the state of Texas here, are very complicated. There are many states that do not allow you to do anything with regard to defensive property, unless it's your property.
Right.
And certainly there are even fewer states that allow the use of deadly force. Now, during the trial, their theory of their defense kind of changed to where it moved from sort of a strictly self-defense case to we were trying to effectuate a citizen's arrest type of thing,
right?
Which is even more fraught with peril,
right?
Because if the citizen's arrest laws are not clear in any state, and that's where you really run the risk of being considered to be a quote unquote vigilante,
right? And what we see with citizen's arrest, it's usually observing some kind of felony. You have to observe the felony, and at that point you're intervening. It's going to depend on your state, obviously, but we see kind of those themes pop up from time to time. But unlike a defensive third person, where, in many states say you basically place yourself in the shoes of the person who you perceive as being attacked, to what extent would that person be justified in using force or deadly force to defend their own lives? Well, then you could theoretically come to their aid in that same capacity. That's what we see with defensive third person. We don't see the same thing with defensive property.
No, and in fact, in this case, it's really kind of even worse because I don't think objectively there was any evidence that Ahmaud Arbery had taken anything. They didn't observe him with anything running away. Nobody had reported specifically. It wasn't like and one key element that's present in most states' citizens arrest laws is that they contemplate that an individual is acting in response to a request for assistance from a police officer. It's usually done at the direction of a police officer. So, so obviously none of that was present here.
No.
And they chased the guy down, and then they had their own weapons. He was unarmed. So, it really would have been kind of interesting if, let's say that Ahmaud Arbery had have shot one of the McMichaels.
Let's say because I think we're kind of dancing around it. But what eventually happens? The McMichaels stop. They pass him, stop. He's running past them. In the process, he attempts to wrestle their firearm away from them. They don't lose control of the firearm, and they end up shooting him dead. But I think that's an interesting, theoretical hypothetical. What if he had taken the firearm from them and shot? At that point, maybe he's charged, and he's, his self-defense is being questioned at that point.
Yeah, but I think looking at it, I think he actually, if that situation had occurred, his situation would have been much more like Kyle Rittenhouse's situation. Yeah. Is that I think he would have had a really applicable self-defense claim.
And I think most of us think, what would I do if I was in that situation? If you wrestled a firearm away from a perceived attacker and shot them in defense, I think a lot of us think, hey, that should be justified. But I would say kind of our big takeaway, if we have any takeaways from this case, really undercuts your immediacy when you're the person going out essentially looking for trouble, or putting yourself in a situation that you may not otherwise be in. And as far as proportionality or the amount of force threatened, you have 3 guys armed versus 1 person unarmed. I think it undercuts the proportionality argument there as well. And it goes to, I'd say, another thing that we see pop up in state law from time to time is, provocation, whether it's a legal provocation. A lot of people think provoking, they think starting. But legally, maybe it means something a little bit more specific. Do you want to talk about that just very briefly?
Most states contain in their self-defense statutes the issue of provocation, is that people cannot provoke a situation basically and use that as a pretext to then use deadly force in response.
Yeah.
And I think they tried to make that an issue in the Kyle Rittenhouse case by saying all of this political stuff about why he was there and he shouldn't have been there. But provocation, I think, clearly is the important issue in the McMichaels Ahmaud Arbery case, where they could have done literally anything other than chase the guy down.
Yeah.
With guns and pickup trucks. So I think it was really easy for the prosecutor to demonstrate that they intended some sort of deadly force to be used in their action, and that would constitute legal provocation that would basically eliminate the justification of their self-defense claim.
Yeah, and I would say if we have one more takeaway from the Ahmaud Arbery case is video evidence. A lot of people say, I'm going to put a dash cam on, or I'm going to record the incident with my phone, or I think a lot of us think, well, I'm a reasonable person. I'm going to act reasonably no matter what situation, whatever the world throws at me, I'm going to act reasonably. And I think this is a good demonstration that video cameras go both ways. They capture the good and the bad. In this case, they captured, bad, and to the McMichaels' detriment. So just inherently video recording something, not necessarily always the best.
Oh yeah, no, because and that's the way most lawyers portray it, and that's the way most jurors accept it, is that the video is the video, and that's going to be, other than being an eyewitness, which if you're an eyewitness, you can't be a juror.
Right.
But the video, having a video, some sort of video, is the closest that you will get to actually being an eyewitness to a situation.
And I would say, and just another, and I don't necessarily like this phrase, but I mean, I can't think of a better one, is that video cameras lie sometimes. And that comes with the idea of, distances, times, where a person's focal point may be. Maybe I'm holding out my cell phone camera, I'm recording like this, it's capturing what's in front of me, but my head is turned to another direction. It doesn't accurately reflect what a person is perceiving at the time whenever, they find themselves in these situations. I think a lot of jurors may hold that against people.
Yeah, there can be a lot of issues with regard to a video perspective. What it didn't capture. Perhaps there was, it may show that somebody shot somebody and the person is unarmed, but what it doesn't show is that there's actually an individual standing behind that person, pointing a gun or doing something other aggressive. So video does have its limitations, but I think at the end of the day, most jurors think that really is the best kind of evidence, and you can't always, even though it may be your video, you can't always count on it being interpreted as being in your favor.
Yeah.